Hi, my name is Andrew Kahn Bartlett, and I work with the Presbyterian Hunger Program. And I'd like to talk to you about where we are in relationship to the planet. I find the example of Stony Point Center, which has done an amazing job of kind of actualizing what reparations can look like, where they have transferred a piece of land and the church on it, the Stony Point Presbyterian Church, to the indigenous peoples that occupy still that land, and were, of course, the traditional caretakers of all of the land that they reside on in that area of Stony Point, New York, and of course wider southern New York and New Jersey. So they have, given this land to those indigenous folks as a great and inspirational example of what reparations can look like. A group that we work with through the Presbyterian Hunger Program and have supported financially is Soul Fire Farm, which is dedicated to reclaiming identity for Black and Brown folks and restoring that connection to land and to farming. And here you can see a group of young volunteers working on the beautiful compost pile and on a pile of fresh soil. And here they are celebrating after a day of hard, good work in front of or behind the kale plants and in front of the corn. And the important relationships and power that's built by doing this work together. Soul Fire Farm is one of the examples of the kind of partners that we work with, and the priority for us is really to partner and to support groups that are doing the work on the ground, grassroots organizations where people know the problems, the solutions, and it's where the work gets done, especially in marginalized communities, those of low wealth, where oppression has taken place or still takes place based on many things, continuing racism, through redlining, through disinvestment, through other ways that racism gets expressed, especially towards people of color. And to focus that work on supporting groups that are organizing and building power in those communities, because that is our strength in our relationships, in the power of people working together in solidarity and working to support groups that are building movements. I'd love to talk a little bit about another group up in Chicago that we've been supporting that is so impressive. It is Little Village Environmental Justice Organization, based there in Little Village of Chicago. And one of their great organizers, Vivi Moreno, talks about the establishment of this community garden right in that area. So we can listen to her words.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out here today. So my name is Vivi Moreno, and I'm a food justice organizer, and that's Jorge Ortiz, and he's my co-organizer. So I've been in El Viejo for about 5 years or so. I've had multiple roles within El Viejo, multiple titles. This is the Semillas de Justicia Community Garden where you're standing, or the Seeds of Justice Community Garden. This is a former brownfield site, so you are standing in a former industrial area. So the way that this garden was envisioned in around 2008, neighbors, if you see the garden is right in front of homes, there's homes over there, right? So El Viejo was contacted by community members saying that there was a really strong oil odor 2008, this was all concrete. There was sort of like really spotty fencing, so people were able to come in and out. People were saying that during hot summer days, they had a hard time breathing. They couldn't. Usually, you open your doors when it's nice, when it's in the summer. They had to keep their windows shut because they were starting to develop respiratory illnesses and just having a hard time breathing. So we ended up working with the community, and then found out, just digging into like who owned the site. It was privately owned, and much like gas stations, they were underground oil tankers in this space, which was causing the smell. The site wasn't in use. It was completely abandoned, which is a pretty common pattern for of industrial legacy in the neighborhood, right? So either we have industries that's actively polluting the neighborhood, or we have industries that have left the neighborhood without doing any cleanup, because they know that cleanup is extremely expensive, but we are the ones that are bearing that cost via emergency visits, and missing school, and missing work, and getting sicker and sicker and sicker. That being said, we did tremendous organizing. By we, I mean folks, because I didn't come here until 2014. But there was a lot of organizing that happened, a lot of door knocking again with all of these homes and homes all around there. You'll probably see them when we go to the park. Asking folks like, what do you want to do? Like, how do you envision this space? After cleaning it up, what do you want? And given the lack of public space that exists in the neighborhood, people were like, hey, we really want a garden. And that came out for two reasons. One, as Kim mentioned, this is a very dense neighborhood, but it also has one of the least amount of open space per capita, right? So the city of Chicago recommends something like 2 acres of open space per 1,000 residents. Little Village, right now we're at 0.51 per 1,000 residents, and that's because we helped open the park in 2014. So before that, we were at 0.23, right? And so very, very dense. Add to that the fact that around half of the neighborhood is 25 or under. So we are a very young neighborhood, very dense, with very little open space, right? Which also, I feel like it nurses a lot of issues that then the community gets blamed for, like a lot of youth being out of the streets, youth not having anywhere to go, and stuff like that. And of course, the community gets blamed for all of these things, right? So this is one of the things that so that's one of the reasons why a garden was a solution.
So the Little Village Environmental Justice Organization is the kind of organizations that we accompany and support around the US and around the world through the Presbyterian Hunger Program. And I invite you to really think about groups in your area, community-based groups, especially those that have been marginalized by systems of oppression, whether they be economic, social, or otherwise, and to consider partnering with them over the long term, to develop those relationships and to accompany them in their work to create solutions for their people. And I thank you for listening.